Ever since the beginning of Classic WoW, the Kingdom of Stormwind has stood out as the final bastion of human power in the East. It is here where the Rin bloodline holds court in Stormwind City, tending to both the domestic problems of the people and the foreign affairs of the Alliance. But the king does not rule alone, and there are other powers at play here that affect much of the happenings in Elwynn Forest and abroad. Chief among these is the House of Nobles, a political assembly made up of several of the chief aristocrats from across the human lands. These nobles wield considerable influence over the military and labor policies of the kingdom, and some have used this influence to promote their own dark agendas. While Alliance players have the occasional dealing with a noble or two, in this video, I'm going to compile all the events related to the House of Nobles as they appear in Classic WoW, and together, we'll figure out just how much these advisors are really helping or hindering the people of Stormwind. As always, thank you for your fun comments and support, and with all that being said, let's get right into it. Before we dive into the stories of the individual nobles, let's first cover what we know about the collective House of Nobles. While there isn't a definitive number of seats given in the lore or game, it seems like the number of members may fluctuate between 5 and 7, but there could be several more who are never mentioned. To reiterate, the house does not include all, or even most, of the nobility in the human lands. Instead, it seems that the House of Nobles represents some of the very top aristocrat families, with the seats mostly inherited by blood, or otherwise, a replacement is selected jointly by the house and the king. On a similar note, nobles seem to serve for life, as there are several who have occupied their seat for many years with no word of elections or term limits. While there seems to be a lack of checks and balances or general accountability within the House of Nobles, they do seem to temper the power of the monarch to prevent him from having absolute power. In this role, they function as a mix between members of a cabinet and as an independent authority, but some of the members take their freedom and power a little too far. It isn't clear how titles play into the hierarchy here, but it does seem that Lord and Lady are higher in rank than Count or Countess, Baron or Baroness, or just Sir, though this could be a matter of personal preference. As we shall soon see, whatever title a noble uses doesn't really indicate where their priorities or their conscience lies. Our investigation into the nobility first takes us to the Petitioner's Chamber of Stormwind Keep, where members of the public are able to meet with the House of Nobles, among others. Count Remington Ridgewell resides here, asking adventurers to retrieve a pair of treasures lost to time for his family's privately owned museum. The Paranoid Tiara, now held by the ogre Grelborg the Miser, is a priceless artifact from the Kingdom of Alterac, and Doomrigger's clasp is a dwarven trinket now forgotten in the halls of Blackrock Spire. Bringing in these two items grants you some favor with the Count, and a nice chunk of gold as well. You have my thanks, and if you didn't already know, the gratitude of a noble in the House of Ridgewell is nigh worth a king's ransom. Despite the questionable repo jobs you end up doing for this guy, at least he isn't actively working to sabotage Stormwind. He's just here as a net neutral on the kingdom, a museum collector working to gather precious items from across Azeroth. Speaking of someone who isn't trying to be a net neutral on the kingdom, meet Lord Borals K. Wishock, who is also available to meet in the Petitioner's Chamber. This man's story is intertwined with that of Warlock players in Classic WoW, who may find themselves in the basement of the Slaughtered Lamb Tavern. There, Zardeth of the Black Claw, a seasoned warlock, has a bone to pick with the noble, who is apparently working to launch an investigation into the shady practices going on right below the bar he so often frequents. It should also be mentioned that Lord Wishock's fondness for drinking has run up quite the tab that, to this day, he refuses to pay. The warlocks decide on a plot to prevent their activities from being halted, and the player ends up being complicit in the delivery of a special concoction to the noble himself. Can you not see that I am busy? I am very important to the future of this kingdom. Oh, why that does look like a refreshing drink. With a member of the House of Nobles disposed of, the Warlock Enclave in Stormwind is free to continue its work undisturbed. Depending on your point of view, Lord Wishock could be seen as an enemy of corruption within the city, or a hypocritical elite who looked down on the common folk. But either way, his political dealings earned him an unfortunate demise. The Stormwind Library and the adjacent garden are the favorite spots of another noble on our list, Lord Gregor Lescavar. Little is known about his history, but by participating in the post-Deadmines quest chain regarding the Defias gang, players can uncover a link between Lescavar and the bandits. Working with the Stormwind Intelligence Service SI-7, you can witness a secret meetup between Lescavar and Marzon the Silent Blade, an assassin with direct ties to the Defias. Lescavar even makes it a point to dismiss his royal guards in the garden before talking with Marzon. "It's time for my meditation. Leave me." "Oh, there you are. What news from Westfall?" Players, now confident in Lescavar's corruption, take both men out of the picture, rendering their services to the bandits useless. While it isn't confirmed in-game, it's likely that Lescavar played a key role in blocking military aid to Westfall, therefore allowing the Defias to pillage and burn unchecked. The House of Nobles and the Stonemasons Guild, which splintered into the Defias gang, were at odds with one another following the nobles' refusal to pay for the reconstruction of Stormwind several years ago. It is unknown if Lescavar became a sympathizer to the Defias over time, or if he was later invited to the House of Nobles as a Defias infiltrator all along. Another noble dead, punished for allying with a criminal gang in which the ends always justify the means. At last, we arrive at the most enigmatic member of the House of Nobles, Lady Katrana Prester. Located near the throne room in Stormwind Keep, Lady Prester appears as just another aristocrat working to expand her family's influence. But the truth is much more sinister. Prester is actually the human disguise of the Black Dragon Onyxia, who had been working her way up the ranks of the nobility for years in order to corrupt Stormwind from within. Onyxia was responsible for keeping the nobles in gridlock on sending military aid and executing dangerous prisoners, and was also the primary factor stirring up the riots between the nobility and the stonemasons. In essence, she was the reason for many of the troubles plaguing human lands, including, indirectly, the formation of the Defias bandits. Through a long and complicated questline, Onyxia is revealed to the court of Stormwind. One creepy detail in this quest is how several of the elite guards in the throne room transform into dragonkin as well, showing just how pervasive the influence of Blackrock Mountain is here within the castle. In the end, Onyxia is driven out of Stormwind to Dustwallow Marsh, where players can raid her lair and put an end to her schemes. Black dragons, disguises, traitors, that is the pinnacle of the drama in the House of Nobles as we see it in classic WoW. But there are a few more pieces of information pertaining to members we haven't discussed yet. For those familiar with Nessingwary's expedition in Stranglethorn Vale, one may come across Sir S.J. Earlgadden, who, according to Nessingwary himself, comes from nobility. After Stormwind betrayed the Stonemasons Guild, Sir Earlgadden grew bitter about the role of the nobles. He no longer wished to uphold the position that his father's bloodline had earned for him in the House of Nobles. This explains why our hunter friend no longer uses the title of Count as his late father once did. It isn't clear if this leaves a vacancy in the House of Nobles, or if one of the others we've met today filled his place. But who knew that one of the most influential aristocrats in Stormwind would end up hunting panthers in the wilds of Azeroth? One final note for today brings us back to the hideout of the Defias, the Deadmines, where every so often adventurers can come across a hostile, brainwashed noble. It's not certain if he was once a member of the House of Nobles, or was just a part of the noble class in general, but it seems the propaganda of the Defias, or maybe the mind tricks of Katrana Prester, crushed his loyalty to Stormwind, if he had any to begin with. So there we have it, After sorting through the stories of all these nobles, it seems that the real winners here are Count Remington Ridgewell and Sir S.J. Earl Gadden, who are, consequently, the two nobles least involved in the actual politics of the court. In terms of the best career choices for an aristocrat, hunting and treasure collecting don't look all that bad. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, may the Force be with you.